At least 2 out of 5 researchers that I've spoken to in the past few years have difficulties developing a conceptual framework for their study. Today, I'm going to share some tips for you to be able to develop a conceptual framework related to your research aim. Hello, everyone. My name is Oluwasewadio. I'm a founder of an online writing community called Journey to Dr. Adio Academic Community, where we support researchers. I'm also a PhD student doing a research on AI in SMEs. Today, we are going to talk about conceptual framework and some of the terms related to it. Most researchers struggle when they hear different terms like concept, construct, theory, theoretical framework, proposition, hypothesis, conceptual framework, variable, independent variable, dependent variable, endogenous variables, mediator, moderator. A good literature review is central to you developing a good conceptual framework. I'm going to break this term down by defining what they really means and how they matters to your study. A concept can be defined as a generalized idea or abstract category that represents a phenomenon you want to study. I'm going to give you an example of that. Let's say we are doing a research on the use of social media by students and its influence on their productivity. So, one of our concepts is going to be productivity, social media usage. So, that's an idea of what we're trying to investigate. Next is construct. Construct can be defined as an abstract concept that is specifically chosen or created to explain a given phenomenon. It could be a simple concept or set of related concepts. It could be an example of some of the factors from a particular theory related to your study. Variable is any factor, characteristics, or condition that can change or vary and can be measured, controlled, or observed in a study. Simply measurable or observable form of a concept. So, variable is a term that is quite common when it comes to quantitative study. It is actually something that is measurable. Theory is a set of organized ideas, concepts, and explanations used to explain why or how something happens. So we all speak about theory, and we have things like social learning theory, technology adoption model. So those are theory used to explain a phenomenon. Theoretical framework. It refers to the structure of theories and concepts that support a study. So I could just describe this as your own theory, set of theory. It could be one that you'll be using within your study. Conceptual framework. So conceptual framework is researchers' own model showing how the study variables are related. So once you have set of theories that you've decided to use for your study, whatever you design showing the relationship between these factors or the concept or the theories you've used represents your conceptual framework. And that is what we are talking about today. Dependent variable, it is the outcome or effect being measured. Independent variable is the factor the researcher changes, controls, or considers as the cause. So, as an example, we're talking about the use of social media by students and its influence on productivity. Without bringing any theory in, one of our independent variable could be social media usage, and the dependent variable would be the outcome we are looking at, which is the productivity. Endogenous variable. It's an independent variable which value is explained by another variable within the study. So, for instance, you have some factors influencing social media usage, and social media usage affect productivity. So, in the real sense, you think about having two independent variable, but once you have a factor influencing the value of social media usage, it no longer being an independent variable, it becomes an endogenous variable. Mediator, it explains how or why an independent variable affects a dependent variable. Moderator, it changes the strength or direction of the relationship between an independent and dependent variable. Proposition, It's a statement that describes the relationship between two or more concepts. So when we talk about proposition, it's more of qualitative studies. Proposition is like a claim or a statement that you may test or you may not test within your research, unlike hypothesis. Hypothesis is a clear, testable prediction about the relationship between variables in a study. Now that we've talked about the concept, I'm going to show you an example of how these terms can help you develop a conceptual framework. Example, let's say we want to investigate the influence of social media on learners' productivity. If I am a quantitative person, my aim could be to examine the effect of social media usage on learners' productivity among university students. So remember, when we talk about quantitative studies, you have something measurable. Productivity has to be measured in terms of variables. So that's the difference between a quantitative study and a qualitative study. Now let's talk about qualitative aim. So I could have an aim like this to explore learners' perceptions regarding how social media affects their productivity. The difference between the two is qualitative is about people's experience, people's perception about a particular phenomenon, which is being investigated. But in terms of quantitative, you want to really measure in terms of numbers and see what relationship exists. Every research is built on existing knowledge. Even if it's a grounded theory research, you still have to refer to some existing literature and see something related to the study. Based on our example, I'm just going to show you the relationship between concepts and the theory. So let's say we are looking at social media and its influence on productivity for learners. So when you're reading your literature review, maybe you conducting the literature review, you could see some concept like social media usage, learners' productivity, distraction, time management, academic motivation, digital learning support, addiction, collaboration and communication, then stress. So those are the kind of terms you would see frequently when you're doing your literature review because they are related to the overall study. We are talking about social media usage, and those factors are like concepts that would emerge from your study. Now, let's talk about theory. Theory also would emerge from your literature review. So, when you read about the subject area, you see how theory are being used within the study, then you see the kind of relationship that exists within the study. For instance, from my literature review, for instance, I've been able to identify some common theories that is related to the study. So an example is uses and gratification theory, social learning theory, technology acceptance model, cognitive load theory, self-regulation theory, media dependency theory. So those are the theory I identify within literature. Identified a lot of studies, but there is something that is still important within your study, which is the knowledge gap. Whatever gap you identify will determine what theory fits in particularly to your study. The knowledge gap will help you identify the most suitable theory related to your study because that is the aspect you're looking at within the subject area. I decided to use the self-regulation theory because it can help me investigate individuals' ability to focus and manage distraction. And the knowledge gap would form your decision on the kind of theory you're using. It can also influence your decision on the constructs that you'll be choosing from a particular theory. I would just be selecting three out of these constructs. We have the self monitoring because I find it important to my study after doing a literature review. I have self control and time management. So, those three are quite paramount to my study. The next theory is uses and gratification theory. Theory could help us understand why do people use social media? What are they trying to satisfy? Is it for entertainment purpose? Is it for social interaction? Is it for information acquiring? So that's what the constructs include: information seeking, entertainment, social interaction, escapism, convenience and accessibility, then we have self-presentation. But I will just be selecting information seeking, entertainment, social interaction, escapism. Now let's talk about hypothesis and proposition in relation to our study. We could have an hypothesis. One, as social media usage for entertainment has a negative influence on learners' productivity. Now, remember the two constructs about entertainment and information were not just something we got from somewhere, they were related from the theory we used, and they also emerged from our literature. So that is how it works. Hypotheses are developed from your literature review, which keep going back to literature review because it's quite important for the success of your research. And remember that we also said that hypotheses are related more of quantitative studies, while proposition are of qualitative studies. So I'm just going to show you an example of proposition we could have. Learners with a high level of strong control are more likely to maintain high productivity despite social media. All these hypotheses or proposition are still from our literature review. What is the argument within the study area? What are researchers saying? And you have to link this to your theories. So you see, everything is quite interconnected. Your theory emerged from your literature review. Your knowledge gap is also from your literature review. Also, the relationship and the hypothesis you're trying to test would also emerge from your literature review. Now let's talk about the conceptual framework. So on the diagram, we have some factors on the left, which are the independent variable. Those were the construct from our uses and gratifications theory. So we have information seeking, entertainment, social interaction are the factors that influence social media usage. So social media usage as an independent variable becomes an endogenous variable because the independent variables on the left influence the factor. Then we have the self-regulation theory. So we just chose a factor from it, which is self-regulation. And in this study, it becomes our mediating factor because through self regulation, productivity is increased when social media is being used as a mediator between the independent variable and the dependent variable. And we have productivity as our dependent variable, which is the final outcome we are trying to measure in the study. Another example is a conceptual framework with a moderating factor. So we already defined moderating factor as a factor that influences the strength of the independent variable on the dependent variable. So similar to the previous one, these factors influence social media usage, and social media usage leads to productivity. However, time management, how the time is managed, would determine the strength of the final outcome, which is productivity. So whether social media would lead to high level of productivity will be determined by this strength of the time management. So that's just an idea of how you can play around different factors and theory. But most importantly, your literature review would give you more direction. So spend more time in reading, and it's going to be very easy for you at the end of the day. I hope you've learned one or two things from this video. If you do, please subscribe to this channel and give us a thumbs up, and just to give us an encouragement. Thank you so much for watching to the end. See you next time. Bye.